It was so unexpected.
You had to be there.
Covering Celtic at that time was a brilliant thing. The atmosphere at Parkhead was always great.
You had to be there.
Nobody ever talks about this game. Nobody saw it.
You had to be there.
Now I am joined in studio by Phil Egan, and we also have Irish Times sports journalist Malachy Clerkin on the line to talk about Malachy's selections of You Had to Be There. 5 excellent choices from Malachy. Only one of them I have been at personally, but I'm looking forward to chatting to them. How are you doing, Malachy?
I'm well, Kathleen. How are you?
I'm good. And Phil, you said you've been at one of these before as well?
Yeah, one of them. And it was, when I saw this, it just brought back the memories of working at it, and just the heart rate was, oh my God. Yeah, we'll get into it.
We'll get into it
more, but my God, it just, yeah.
Malachy, you've obviously been to quite a lot of exciting events over the last few years. What was your thought process when you were thinking about the events you wanted to choose?
You're very kind, Kathleen. You were about to say over your very long career. You very old man.
Never.
You very old man. My response when Andy got on to me yesterday was 5 is going to be hard to pick here, because I was really, really lucky in the early part of my career when I worked in the Sunday Tribune. I was kind of a general sports writer and managed to get to a lot of different sports. These days I do mostly GAA, but I got to travel an awful lot during the 2000s and go to an awful lot of great sport. Like I went to Ryder Cups and the Masters and Olympics and the World Cup and the Euros and Cheltenham Gold Cups and Grand Nationals and all that sort of stuff, and it was all fantastic, like there was an awful lot of it. But my thought process, funny enough, the first thing that jumped into my mind was a really early one, and I think I only have it at like 2 or 3 on my list, but it was I did the Euros in Portugal in 2004, and it was my first time being away, really. It was certainly my first time at a big tournament, and there was loads of great matches at it, but there was one particular one, and we'll get to it. I think you guys want to do this in order, so I'll talk about it then. But it was the starting point for when I was drawing up a list, because a lot of them, the thing that I remembered about them changed the older I got, if that makes any sense, and that'll become more and more apparent as you go through
your list.
but the one at the Euros in 2004 was just it was a matter of being. It was the first time. I don't know if it was the first time, but it was the time that really stands out in my memory of going, holy shit, this is a great life I've chosen for myself here. This is brilliant. Like, well done me.
A great feeling.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Well, we'll get straight into it then. So 2017 All-Ireland football final, Dublin versus Mayo is your first pick of the bunch. Were you working at this one, or were you there as a spectator?
Not only was I working, but I had to file on the whistle. I had to take the most incredible sports event, I'd say, that I've ever been at, and file a report on it about 5 minutes after it finished. So that was a very heightened experience, and like I knew at the time, and I think all of us that were there and everybody that watched knew at the time, that it was an extraordinary piece of sport. But I've gone back to it since a couple of times, and actually last year, ahead of the Dublin Mayo semi-final in 2021, I actually went back to it and did a big piece looking back at it, essentially because I wanted to see, like, was I kidding myself, or was I over-romanticizing it, or was I making it out to be a bigger thing or a better thing than it actually was? And it turned out that I had sort of lowballed it, that the quality of it was really, really beyond extraordinary, and only matched by the drama of it. Like a million things happened in that match. I think now we're sort of far enough removed from the Dubs winning their 6 in a row, and particularly their 5 in a row, because the 6th one was in the pandemic, and it was a kind of an anomalous one, but they all count, of course. But I think we're far enough removed to go back and see that was the Dubs at their best. That the semi-final, they had demolished Tyrone, a Tyrone team that people had kind of fancied, and they had just completely shown that, you know, they had worked out how to play against a team playing with a blanket defence. That it was what everything had led towards since Donegal had beaten them in 2014, and Conor O'Callaghan had just arrived. And when I say arrived, like, he scored a goal after 83 seconds of his first All-Ireland final by skinning Colin Boyle, like a 4 or 5 time All-Star. Like, it was just ridiculous. In his first touch of a ball in an All-Ireland final. I think that was the best Dublin team. Like, they, and by extension, I think it was the best Mayo team. You know, it was, everybody was fit. They had no injuries. Lee Keegan was there. Tom Parsons, it was the best season of Tom Parsons' life. Aidan O'Shea was I think Mayo scored 9 points in the first half, and Aidan O'Shea had a hand in 8 of them. Like, he had an extraordinary first half performance and still got shit for it afterwards, because he took on a stupid shot with the outside of his boot that he didn't score in the second half at a bad time. It was a bad miss. But the two teams were so well matched, and they went at it. It was just mile a minute, and it was phenomenal. And it came down to what it came down to. Like, it came down to the last minute. Cillian O'Connor misses a free at one end of the pitch that an inch to the left, 2 inches to the left, it goes in off the post rather than coming out off the post. Dean Rock scores a free at the other end with Lee Keegan throwing his GPS at him. It was really monumental game of football. And for it to be in the All-Ireland final is, like, it happens once a decade that the best match of the year is in the All-Ireland final. It happens almost never that the best match of a decade is an All-Ireland final. And I know there were a lot of great matches in the 2010s. I know a lot of people would say that the All-Ireland semi-final in 2013 between Kerry and Dublin was probably the best match. And I was at it too, and it was just mind-blowing as well. But to me, for sheer drama, for the two best teams to be duking it out like that, that game just stands above it. I think it's, I don't know, recency bias and all that, even though it's like 5 years ago now, but I think it stands above anything I've ever been at.
How many words do you have to file for that?
Oh, they didn't care. You see, the great thing about the live report after a game is that there's no dedicated word count. It's not like you have to fit a certain amount into the newspaper. It goes up online. So I just wrote and wrote and wrote. I'd say it was about 1,000 words. It was just, and it just kind of, but when it's that good, it just pours out of you. Like, there was so much incident.
The whole tone of the piece, though, is hanging in the balance.
Totally. Like, there was a brilliant, actually, when I went back to do the piece last year, there was an 11-minute period. Actually, hang on, I get what I wrote here, because it's it actually, yeah, there was an 11-minute period at the start of the second half, from say 42 minutes to 53 minutes, where Stephen Cluxton makes a brilliant save from Jason Doherty. Dublin go up the other end of the pitch. Paul Mannion straight in on David Clark. He makes a brilliant save. 2 minutes later, John Small mistimes a shoulder and Colin Boyle. Second yellow card. Everybody knows he's about to get a second yellow card. And this is it. Like, the whole of Mayo, everybody knows, oh my God, there's a half an hour left here. Dublin are going to be down a man. This is it. This is actually happening. And it lasts like 2 seconds, because Donal Vaughan comes in and buries him and gets sent off himself. And you're just going. And that those 2 saves and the 2 red cards happened within like 4 minutes of each other. Then Dublin score a few points. Then Lee Keegan comes forward for a goal. Then, he comes forward for a goal. And so what it was, in the space of 11 minutes, there had been 2 point-blank saves, 2 red cards, a Mayo goal into the hill, 5 points scored from 5 attempts. and not a single wide. And then everybody sort of sits around and goes, there's 20 minutes left here. This game is insane. So
even listening to that, you're like, how did that all fit into just 11 minutes of playing time?
Yeah, exactly. It was just, it was unbelievable. It really was. And it stands, as I say, I think it stands the test of time. I think it's the ultimate argument in any like we all know how great that Dublin team was. Like, we're all lucky to have been around for it, even though it didn't probably feel like it for an awful lot of us in the middle of it, because they just kept winning and winning and winning. But like in 20 years and 30 years, we'll be able to go, look, that was like, say what you want about the players today, but that team was spectacular. They really were fantastic. Like, we forget, Jack McCaffrey went off after 3 minutes of this game he did his knee. Like, he was gone after 3 minutes. Paul Flynn had to come on and play in midfield. James McCarthy had to move back. Like, that's the level of player you're talking about. But any argument that there ever is about Mayo being bottlers or Mayo being chokers or whatever, I mean, I just challenge anybody to watch that game. They absolutely lived, not even lived, like they outplayed the greatest Dublin team of the age for long stretches of that match. They weren't good enough to win, and that's fine. And, you know, they never won their All-Ireland. But I always go back to that game, and if, for anybody who sneers at those Mayo teams, like, they don't know anything about sport if they can watch that game. And like, they played so many games that went to draws and replays and all of that sort of stuff. And fine, Dublin were better in the end, but Dublin were better than everybody in the end. Nobody else was anywhere close. And that game that'll be with me forever.
A bit of a change for your second one compared to that, but we have the 2008 Cheltenham Gold Cup, named one of the most memorable races ever. Where is this? What was this one for you? Why did it stick out? Did I read that initially when you started out in your sporting career, racing wasn't really something that you took much interest in, and then obviously you've kind of gone the other direction now?
Yeah. It was funny. Again, it goes back to how lucky I was working in the Tribune at the time. Like, we had a very small staff, so you don't get to sort of say, well, I'm just a soccer writer or I'm just a GA writer. Like, everybody sort of did everything. And in around 2004, they said, go on, you go over and do Cheltenham. And literally, like, I don't downplay this in the slightest. 2004 Cheltenham was the first time I'd ever been to a horse race. You know, I could not have told you. I barely knew the front end of a horse from the back of it. Like, I really had no expertise, no sense of anything really. You know, it wasn't even a sport that I was overly interested in growing up, because, like, to me, like, it was very hard to understand. It always seemed to be about gambling, and I wasn't a big gambler, and my dad was never like, we'd back a horse in the Grand National, but you know, that'd be it. You know, the last thing you'd be doing on a Saturday would be checking out, you know, who won the 320 at Kempton. Like, it just never occurred to us. And but I went to Cheltenham in 2004, and it's an extraordinary event and in an extraordinary place. And the more I got into it, the more I met the people involved in it. Like, there's some of the most incredible sports people around, jockeys especially, but trainers too. Like, it's a really weird life to pick for yourself, and you're mostly born into it. Very few people kind of decide to come from the outside world into it, because it can be quite clannish, but it's also an awful lot of hard work and all of that sort of stuff. But anyway, by 2008, one of the things that we had done in the Tribune was we had brought Ruby Walsh on as a columnist. And I was ghostwriting it. And I basically sat down with Ruby and said, I know nothing really about horse racing. So you're going to have to talk to me as if I'm a 2-year-old here. And essentially, this column isn't going to be you tipping horses every week. It's going to be you explaining to an uneducated world what the world of horse racing is like. And it was a very good column. And he, like Ruby, as he has gone on to be on TV now in retirement, is a brilliant explainer. Like he would balk at me saying this because he never liked school, but he would be a brilliant teacher because he takes everything down to brass tacks and makes it really easy to understand while making it completely compelling. And he's one of Ireland's greatest ever sports people. Like, he's just an extraordinary winner. And so I had become quite close to him. And in 2007, he had this amazing season with Cauto Star. And Cauto Star was the first like superstar horse that I got to kind of understand and kind of looked out for when his races came and all that sort of stuff. And by 2008, his stablemate had come along, this huge horse called Denman. And again, you know, like 3 years beforehand, I wouldn't have known the difference in styles between the two of them. Cauto Star was this regal prince of a horse, like this beautiful, gorgeous thing that, you know, could win races at loads of different distances, could win at 2 miles, could win at three and a quarter miles, but like was fast, but also stayed, and like this complete piece of equine perfection. Whereas Denman was this big bull of a thing. Like, he was a monstrous thing. And they called him the Tank. And they were at the same yard, Paul Nicholls' yard in England. They were in the same stables, like they literally lived one box over from each other. And so it was this great there was this great narrative around it. And even at that, like, I wouldn't have included that here, except for, and this is what always sticks with me, there's the Gold Cup, on Gold Cup Day at Cheltenham, there's about 40 minutes between the race before the Gold Cup and the Gold Cup. And the whole week becomes about that race. And some years it's a middling out Gold Cup, you know, the horses are scratchy enough, there's no obvious superstar. Or some years there's a really obvious superstar and the rest of them are all just kind of out with the washing and nobody, you know, there's no real excitement around it. Whereas this year, there was these two horses, there was Denman and there was Cauto Star. Ruby had the choice, he could have chosen to ride either of them, so that was, you know, that was a subplot going on. They were both trained by the same guy, Paul Nicholls, and everybody pretty much knew that it was going to come down to these two. And the reason I picked it for this list is anytime I'm ever asked about the sporting event you were at where there was the most tension, I always come back to this. And I don't know if, again, with all of these things, it's all subjective and maybe you're overselling things. But I remembered the half an hour, 40 minutes before that race. And like, Cheltenham is this wild place. Like, there's, and especially on Gold Cup Day, there's thousands there, and people are half paced and people are betting and everybody's having a good time. But the tension, because everybody had one or the other. And well, what do you think? Who's it going to be? Do you have Cauto? Do you have Denman? Who'll it be? I don't know. Because literally nobody knew. Nobody could say, if you were going with any confidence, you were kind of spoofing, really. You know, there was nobody could say for sure how this race was going to turn out. And I remember clear as day, I was there with Vincent Hogan from the Indo and Philip Quinn from the Mail. He's the Mail now. Was he the Mail then? I can't remember. But anyway, it was the three of us. And we went down to the last fence. And that's the great thing about Cheltenham as well, that you can walk to the inside of the course and stand at the last fence and watch them go by. And in all the years that not all the years, but anytime I'd been to Cheltenham, I don't remember having actually done that. Certainly not for the Gold Cup. And I remember we were down at the last fence when they came round just before they went out on the final circuit. And the three of us were standing, we could have been no more than 8 feet from where the horses passed. And you got that sense of, like, when you watch horse racing on TV and they do these graceful jumps over the fences, you go, wow, it's nature, it's such beautiful poetry that they're involved in. Jesus Christ, when you're up close to these horses, and it's God Almighty, especially Denman, like, you have to kind of step back because they're these powerful, huge machines going at a massive, massive pace. Denman kind of let it out and in the end ran Cotto's stamina out of him, and galloped up the hill and went away and won. And I remember because I was close enough to Ruby at the time, and we would go on to write a book together. I remember kind of feeling like I wanted Cotto to win, you know, or I wanted Ruby to win back-to-back Gold Cups, which he came back the following year and won the 2009 one. But I wanted it for him, so I was a bit kind of down at the result. But I came away going, I've never been around a place where there was that real thick tension for 40 minutes before an event.
Malachy, I feel like I was there just listening to you describe it. We may have to run through your final three a bit quick because you could literally talk to you for hours about this. But your third one is 2004 France versus England at the Euros. The Zidane free kick. I think a lot of people will remember the end of this one.
Well, yeah, and I kind of vaguely mentioned this before. Like, I was 25, I think. It was my first time ever at a big tournament. Like, I was a soccer guy growing up, really. That was my sport, you know. And to be at a major tournament was like, you know, over the years you become like you become less not impressed with it all, but you understand that look, it's a job, you know. At the back of it all, you go, you get the work done, you leave, and you can't be a fan your whole life. But like, I was 25 and this was on a Sunday night. That's important because I was working for a Sunday paper, so this was essentially a night off. And I was in Lisbon, one of the world's great cities, going to watch England play France, which was the kind of glamour tie of the first round. And I had no work to do. So it was fantastic. It was a free hit. And Rooney played in that game. And Rooney was 17 and was taking the world by storm. And well, he absolutely battered France. And England went ahead. Rooney skated in, beat 3 or 4 of them to get in for a penalty, which Beckham hit and Barthez saved, and that would have won the game for England. And in the 90th minute, France get a free on the edge of the area, and I'll never forget this thought. I remember going, "All right, Zidane, if you're the man, let's see it. Let's see it." He absolutely did it.
So you're crediting yourself with getting that Zidane free kick in, are you?
Not really, but what I was in my head was going, Jesus Christ, I'm here for this.
Yeah.
In my head I was going, I'm here. This is a magnificent game. This is one of the world's greatest players. He was my favorite player at the time, of course, but like, he was everybody's favorite player at the time. But it was my first time ever being in the company of an all-time great, and he actually went and did the thing that made him the all-time great. And then 2 minutes later, he scored a penalty as well. Steven Gerrard gave a stupid ball back to David James. Thierry Henry was fouled, and Zidane scored the winner. So that was it. That was brilliant. That was really brilliant.
2008 was clearly a good year for you because you also have the Olympic 100-meter final with Usain Bolt.
Yeah, and like, this was, you know, I'm not an athletics reporter, I never was, but, you know, you go to the Olympics and you cover everything. And I remember it was the day that Darren Sutherland won his bronze medal, and I had to run from it across. It was a Saturday, so I had a lot of. It was a busy day, but it was great. Like, you're at the Olympics. There's an Irish medal, and then you finish it off on Saturday night with the 100 meters final. And I'd never been to, again, like Cheltenham. You know, like, this is how lucky I was. I'd never been to an Olympics. I'd never been to a track meet. Really? Had I even been out to the Irish seniors? I don't think I had. So like, literally the first race I ever reported on was Usain Bolt breaking the world record in the 100 meters final in the Olympics. And
just a small brag for you there, Malachy.
But it's not even a brag. Like, it's kind of going, that was just, I was so lucky, you know, really, to be around it. And it was extraordinary. Like, it was really amazing. Like, the 100 meters final, the lights went down. They played a drum beat over the start to mimic your pulse, because whatever way they did it, and it was kind of needless theatre. And then this guy just he was the last one out of the blocks, and then he just sprinted past everybody with his lace open and took like 2/10 off the world record or whatever it was. Like, and I remember writing at the time, like, God knows whether this is real or not. Like, what do I know? Who, you know, none of us know if we can believe this or not. But Jesus Christ, this was some event. You know, it was extraordinary to be there. Like, it, you know, afterwards everybody was skeptical, and the 100 meters is a filthy event and filthier than even the Tour de France. And like, I still don't know if it was real or not, but I do know that it was amazing to be there at the time. It was really extraordinary.
And to round off your list then, we've gone back to the GA. We've the 2014 All-Ireland hurling final, drawn match between Kilkenny and Tipperary, which, fun fact, was my first ever All-Ireland final. And I just remember being absolutely shocked at, like, this big old man beside me screaming, "Come on, Bubbles! Do it, Bubbles! Come on, Bubbles!" And I was like, what is going on here? It was my first, like, proper experience of being in that sort of atmosphere, and it was incredible.
Yeah, like, another amazing game. Like, you know, hurling produces these games 2 or 3 times a year. Like, it's what makes it the sport it is. I remember shortly after, about a week after this game, I got an email from 2 Danish journalists who were, I think they wrote for, like, Danish Lonely Planet or something like that. They weren't sports journalists anyway. They were travel guys anyway. And they wanted to meet me for a coffee to talk about hurling, because they had been in Dublin and had got tickets for this match. And so they wanted to include it in whatever they were writing. And I went for coffee with them. And the first thing I said to them was, I need you guys to know that what you saw on Sunday isn't, like, that's not every week. Like, you really were at something that will be remembered for years and years and years, because that game was unbelievable quality. When I talk about that game, I always refer to the fact that, okay, Bubbles, as you say, he hit a free from 100 meters at the end that went to Hawkeye. It was first ever use of Hawkeye in an All-Ireland final, and it was to decide the All-Ireland final. And had Hawkeye not existed, it's a fair chance the umpires would have given the point and Tipperary would be All-Ireland champions. But it was given as a wide. Hawkeye gave it as a wide. And I always go back to the fact that was the first, and that was in the 74th minute. It was the first wide since the 44th minute of that game. That was how high the quality was. The game between 2 teams that knew each other inside out, that had amazing players on both sides. Like, Richie Hogan was the hurler of the year that year, and he was amazing in that game. Richie Power scored 2-1, one of which he flicked over tip goalie Darren Gleeson. It was a beautiful, gorgeous goal. And I always remember he kind of went away wagging his finger after it, which is the sign of a true goal scorer who knows he's after doing exactly what he wanted to do. And Bonaramara was amazing for Tipperary. He got through this amount of work, and everything that went through him worked out well for Tipperary. But for a half an hour towards the end of a game, an All-Ireland final where everything was on the line, nobody missed. And I'll never forget that. Like, it's very rare you come across quality like that in any sport, where basically for a half an hour, nobody made a mistake. Everybody knew that every shot had to go over the bar or into the net, and every shot went over the bar or into the net until the very, very last one. And look, he was shooting from 100 meters, and Hawkeye said he missed by an inch or 2. So it was an extraordinary, extraordinary game. And, you know, the reason, you know, it was so amazing was that Brian Cody spent the following 3 weeks making damn sure that the replay would be nowhere near as enjoyable, and therefore Kilkenny won the replay.
Malachy, thank you for taking us on that journey. I feel like I've been to 5 different events this morning and I haven't left my chair in the studio. It's been great.
No problem. I was delighted to.
Thank you.
Take it easy.
It was so unexpected.
You had to be there.
Covering Celtic at that time was a brilliant thing. The atmosphere at Parkhead was always great.
You had to be there.
Nobody ever talks about this game. Nobody saw it.
You had to be there.